So welcome. This is section 4 for the best kept secret. My name is Jim Lycano with HPE. Kelly Smith from SAP and Randall Grogan is on the line. And this section is for Randall to talk about energy transfer, his company, as well as why he chose this solution. And so, Randall, I'll just queue up, what's on there, and then if you want to just cover energy transfer real fast, and then I'll just prompt you for the other questions.
Sure. So energy transfer, if I were in the room there, I'd ask for a raise of hands of how many folks know energy transfer. Very seldom do I see, unless you're in this industry. Yes, you, Jim, don't count.
No hands,
very, very seldom do I see folks raise their hands. So, we are, by most measures, the largest midstream pipeline company in North America. I think current we're about 135,000 miles pipeline, predominantly natural gas, crude, NGLs, kind of in that order. We're in the Fortune 50 range, plus or minus, about 90 billion. We've got some large strategic export facilities, Marcus Hook, Dieterland. We have a large first purchasing business. We purchase about 30 to 40 different 40,000 transactions every month of crude, from small mom and pop organizations, and we use that as supply for our pipelines. We're an MLP and multi-limited partnership, and that model really promotes growth. So we do a lot of organic growth, and we do a lot of acquisitions. Every year we do 1 or 2 acquisitions. But I think
can I interject one thing, Randall? Like, if we talk about, this is a really appropriate conversation. So who provides all of the power for these data centers and AI with all of this additional power we need? Oh, that's right. A lot of it's generated from natural gas from Energy Transfer's pipelines.
We're actually assigning a lot of deals, a lot of them in Texas and Oklahoma, really around providing natural gas, because a lot of the data centers are in and around Texas, and they're all using natural gas generation in many cases to provide that, and we're signing deals to provide that natural gas. So these are long-term deals that we're signing. But I was going to say, I'd be remiss without really noting that I'm talking about energy transfer, but Sunoco LP is one that everybody does recognize. Sunoco is a wholly owned subsidiary of Energy Transfer. They trade on their own, so they don't show up in our stock. But they're in the $25 billion revenue range as well. They just made an acquisition that's going to double their size, so they'll be in the $50 billion range. Excuse me, and making them kind of the largest, in their class. We got USA Compression, buyer standards, relatively small at $1 billion. They provide compression services to the industry. We're their largest customer as well. So all in all, our systems support not just energy transfer, but Sunoco, USA Compression, SEC. So, we are, when we kind of finish consolidating this latest acquisition of the system, we'll be about $140, $150 billion if running on a single instance of SAP. So that's energy transfer. And
thank you for telling us about energy transfer. And so when you look at all of everything you've got going on in your business, why did you select RISE at the time, or Cloud ERP as it's newly renamed, and the CDC option?
Yeah. So if you kind of look back about 5 or 6 years ago, we did a big application rationalization. We took multiple instances of SAP ECC and 50 other applications and basically consolidated into one single instance of S/4HANA. So by energy industry standards, that was pretty early on. And that's 5 or 6 years ago. So, of course, it's in our data center. We're running HP hardware, and everything's running on that hardware in our data center right now. And it continues to run, but it's coming to end of life, which kind of gets us to where we're at right now. SAP has been asking about organizations moving to RISE, and our hardware has a 5-6 year end of life time span. So for us, if the conversation was going to happen about moving to into a CDC model, or for that matter into a hyperscaler model, it had to happen really in the 2024 time range. So from a timing perspective, that timing really worked for us. Somebody mentioned risk. Because we move about a third, if not a little bit more than that, of all the hydrocarbons in North America. We're considered critical infrastructure. So I know there's some cybersecurity folks in the audience here. For us, that's incredibly important. All of our commercial systems sit within our data center. I've got Right Angle and Intero and Allegro and Align and a bunch of synthesis and all these other very oil and gas sort of applications that feed probably 99% of all the transactions that come into my system, the SAP system. So for us, latency is a concern because everything that happens and everything that really comes in our system is largely coming from these commercial systems. Our data center is a standalone data center that we own. We actually have third parties that co-locate in our data center. For us, it's actually a bit of a profit center, probably a wash when you get all said and done. But it's also our backup both in Houston and Dallas for our pipeline control group. So we have to have a backup facility. So, really, for some organizations, moving things out of a data center and into the cloud really is a cost savings. For us, the data center is still going to be there. So it's just as long as we have the additional floor space and that sort of thing, there's no opportunity cost. So for us, there was no financial reason to move it out of the data center and into the cloud. So, by and large, we feel that keeping SAP and keeping the hardware in our data center provides us with lower latency. We feel like we have a better opportunity to kind of manage the cybersecurity risk around that. We feel like if there is an issue, and Kelly mentioned earlier, we did take the 99.9 option. I think she said that they're sitting at about 99.996, which is very, very similar to historically how we've been operating within our data centers. So, for us, it just felt like if there was an issue, we would have a better opportunity to manage that issue, to kind of be the first in line to get it corrected versus in a hyperscaler, you're one of many. So right or wrong, we feel like we have better control by doing that within our own data center. Part of our deal with having the conversations, and Kelly can attest to that, we were very insistent that our transition to this RISE Cloud ERP model needed to be cost neutral for us. So we went through a lot of back and forth in terms of what does the cash flow for this look like, and we felt like from a timing perspective this worked, and we felt like from a cash flow perspective it was neutral, and ultimately we've invested in SAP as our ERP, and we believe in it. SAP is clearly making it financially imperative that folks move into this direction. Both sticks and carrots. And one of the carrots is AI. So part of the cost to achieve AI is a movement to this RISE model. And we don't know exactly what AI is going to bring for us, but we believe it does have value. So I'll stop talking for any questions.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
And
how many racks of infrastructure are part of the implementation of the private cloud ERP?
I believe there's 3 racks in our Houston center and 2 racks in our business continuity center in Dallas.
And that supplies the disaster recovery for the SAP solution?
Yeah, between Houston and Dallas, yes.
Okay.
we have a 4 availability zone model now that is approved too. So, some people are looking at doing the, patching and rotating once, and then you stay there. And so you don't have to patch, you don't have to rotate, patch, and rotate back. So there are different options available in that. But Randall, it's important to know too, Randall is a GreenLake, an HPE GreenLake infrastructure as a service cloud purchaser from a direct contract standpoint. And also now, because of the way that this GreenLake infrastructure as a service works under SAP, he's got that same GreenLake service, but through the SAP contract. So it was kind of a logical extension of the way that Energy Transfer thinks of cloud being the right cloud for the right workload at the right time. And like most customers, they're using hyperscale public cloud and they're using private cloud. And this is just a great example of private. But Randall, let me ask you another question. So what's most important for other customers to be aware of when they're considering SAP Cloud ERP?
Well, at Cloud ERP, obviously, it's kind of where you are in that journey, so to speak. So, A lot of we by energy industry standards are ahead of the curve. Most energy industries are probably back in the ECC. Really haven't even made that move to S4. For us, we're already in that model. I think a lot of it depends on kind of where you are in that journey, and obviously from an ERP standpoint, getting to a version that's supportable by SAP, getting a version that gives you the value of AI and that sort of thing is important. If you're really considering the CDC model, it really boils down to, I think, ultimately, are you large enough that you have the data center that can support it? Are you, do you have a complicated enough, environment that you need to consider, the private cloud versus the public cloud? I do think that it's going to be a long time before organizations of our size and scale will be, considering a public cloud. We've got too many customizations that we have to have. I don't think there's any alternative right now. So anyway, I'm not sure if I answered the question, Jim, but back over.
Where's the data? I mean, do you have governance over all the SAP data for your private cloud ERP? I mean, the question from my perspective, if we're talking about AI, since someplace somebody is going to want to have access to anonymized data or something like that in order to train their AI solutions, are you signing away some aspects of data security?
I hope not. The data's in our data center, and that's very important to us in our leadership.
I understand that, but that doesn't mean it couldn't be transferred to.
No, it does not, and contractually it will not. I mean, obviously that's a big concern for us, and I think you'll see that as we kind of look at the growth of the CDC model, that a lot of the organizations that are heading that direction will be governmental, will be maybe in industries where that data and that privacy is very, very important to them.
Yeah, my concern would be if your focus is to try to view it as an AI enabler, and somewhere somehow that data needs to be used to train machine language, neural networks, and that sort of stuff. And is that training infrastructure going to be part of this private edition cloud ERP, or is it going to be done someplace else?
Kelly, I'm gonna defer that to you.
So the next. No, Randall, I was going to say the next section is kind of dedicated to the overall far-reaching AI and how that kind of works in the world. And so the SAP AI engine for their agentic AI is going to use your data, and it's protected in its form the way that it uses the data. And so that is definitely SAP data. Whether you elect to bring in your other data into that model or your other AI model is up to you. I mean, I think SAP has a lot of data for an organization. Even if it represents 50% of the data in an organization, that's a lot of data. So it has a good chance of being an important AI model. But there isn't a software provider out there today that doesn't have their own AI model. And so each company is going to have to choose their own governance for how their AI works. And if they're using sensitive data, whether it be formulas or particular services or whatever secrecy they have, they're probably going to be thinking overarching. And so that's the important thing, is this is not restrictive, it's inclusive. And so when we talk about AI, and you talk about an LLM in the public cloud, you can elect to put what data, sustainability data, for example, you want to bounce it against everybody else. And so that's a good thing for saying, I'll release the information on sustainability out to the LLM and I'll get my benchmark against everybody else. But when it comes to energy transfer and where their pipelines are and things, they probably are very secretive and close-lipped on where those are located. They're probably not going to divulge that information on maps so that other competitors can say, oh, I'm going to offer a lower cost option for routing natural gas. So I'm just saying that I think that it's important to give choices. This world of modern cloud is hybrid, whether by accident or by design. And if you can't try to figure out what makes the most sense where, then you're probably going to fail in the model. It's too complicated. So I have a little diagram that shows technically how you would share information for AI through the integration center for SAP, and you can use your local data with it if you want to, or you can bring the data back from SAP to your local AI model if you want to use that more sensitive model.
Before we will go further, Randall, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
What benefit do you see after this move for yourself?
I mean, ultimately, I think for us, it is less that we felt that we needed infrastructure or platform as a service. I mean, I've got a very strong infrastructure team. I got a strong networking team. We have a good data center. So that for us was not really where the value, the business case, lied. I mean, I think for us, it really boiled down to this is the roadmap that SAP is heading toward. It's been made very clear that new functionality is going to be made available to those that are following this cloud ERP roadmap. AI being one example of that. As you're purchasing new functionality, and we do a lot of acquisitions, that it's going to be much more costly to do that outside of the kind of the cloud ERP model. So, I mean, I think for us, it's both new innovations and access to those, as well as just the financial and the business case of not making that transition.
So basically, the biggest value at least that you're pointing out, is that you didn't need to move to cloud.
Yep.
Okay.
I have a follow-up. Hello, Shala here. It's from Randall. So to follow up on that, one thing I'm curious about from a DevOps perspective / solution architect who just has not had to work with SAP, if I could ask, what was your overall experience with doing, making the move? Did it feel like a one team situation? Was there someone there to guide you? How was that?
We're still in flight. So just to let you everybody know, so we're at the process where the hardware is now in our data center. HPE is is in the next few weeks, we'll be wrapping up, getting all of that ready to go, and handing it over to SAP to start their process of configuring the systems before it gets handed over to us in late June, July. So, I mean, I think so far the teams are all working well together. We've got HPE, we have, SAP and their delivery team all on calls at least weekly, although I've had meetings 3 times in the last 2 days, this morning included. So, I mean, that's working well. I mean, so it's a bit of a dance to make that transition. So it's not just us, it's kind of us and HPE and SAP, and then you have to have a migration partner. That's not something that as a client we can do. So we have a third-party migration partner. It could have been SAP, or it could be any number of certified partners from SAP to do that. So at that point in time, we're going to have 4 folks all working together to get there. Oh, I guess really 3, because HPE is going to be kind of done with their part of the job once that's transitioned to SAP.
Thank you.
I think a lot of it boils down to, since you have a lot of cooks in the kitchen, right? You need a strong governance model. And that's something we've talked about from the beginning is, in the pre-sales motion, who are the resources that are going to see this from the day one, post, and ensuring that many of those resources are still intact along the way. Because if we put, for example, a new cloud architect into this right now, during this time, it would be such a challenge to get that person up to speed. So we try to keep it very consistent from that perspective and have levels of communication across our organization, aware and very detailed of what's going on, to be able to jump in, obviously, if something does shake up. But that communication and structure has to be intact from day one.
Nice. And then one thing that I've been hearing throughout the presentation is, that people see it as something that's rigid. So what are kind of ways where you're trying to, I guess, kind of make it seem, are you able to kind of dip a toe in without going all in? Are there sandbox or trial environments so you can kind of get a feel for it before you just hey, yeah, let's just go all in?
Yeah, we have customers that look at, putting a minimum box in place, so to speak. So we have a minimum quantity S4 user box that you can get Cloud ERP with that, minimal purchase. And then they use that to figure out, okay, so for example, one of the customers in this room today is doing just that. They're looking at saying, what are the agentic AI use cases that are going to come with S4? And so they have a box and they're starting to look at testing some of those, use cases and opportunities, dipping that toe in to say, okay, is the value there? Is this beneficial for our business users, et cetera? Because, for so long, SAP's audience was IT. IT. But when we're looking at the transformation and capitalizing on AI and ML and trying to get standard business processes, our ecosystem is not just IT anymore. The business has to be involved with some of this, decision making. So we have to be able to show them from a usage perspective, see it to believe it, and how that would benefit their day to day. So I think absolutely we have those opportunities to be flexible and offer, the sandbox environments.
Yeah, there's lots of choices now for how to dip your toe in the water, whether it's non-production or whether you're going to, just test out the operational model. So maybe like Randall's team had been providing their own database administration and basis support, which is the IT piece of SAP security and things like that. And so now he's got an operational model to say SAP's in charge of that, along with shared responsibility from his team. And those are different changes. So people look at that and like, wow, that's a lot of change to absorb in my organization. What if they don't do the same job we did? Mm-hmm. What if they do a really better job and our people aren't valued as much? There's all sorts of things going on behind people's, what they're not saying. But those are all, ways to test and you don't have to go all in. I always say the same analogy as you did, Shala, is dip your big toe in the water. You don't have to jump into the water all at once. You can figure out what works best for your organization when it's a big decision like this. And those flexible options are, as of right now, today, for the first time, we have all of those options on the table.
I've got it.
Oh, sorry. It made me think of another question. Like, what are some of maybe the common type blockers or hesitation that maybe you all are seeing with making the move?
So I think that there's complexity in these large customer bases and ensuring that there's a champion on the customer side.
For sure.
So a lot, you can have users, for example, who are dealing with, clicking in 20 different things to get to the final destination, and they're saying, well, how do we fix this? How do we fix this? But it has to get to a level of an executive alignment, ensuring that from top down, change is going to happen, and we're going to go through this evaluation to see where those value drivers are. That is first and foremost very important, because if you don't have that, we're all on a hamster wheel trying to figure out how to get there and get that communication and alignment across the organization to see where opportunity is. Ultimately, everyone has a day job.
Yeah.
This is an addition to a day job, right? So you need resources, and you need, depending on the scale of your transformation, you need a lot of resources. So how do you identify those resources and get them into a model where you have GPOs, process owners, and looking at those ways of transformation? So challenges of resources comes into play there, of the timing in which they can do that while they have their day-to-day job. Can they get out, can they focus on this holistically? So that's another area of challenge. And then it boils down to obviously working through a lot of the change that's going to happen from an operational perspective, because now you're giving your keys to the kingdom to SAP. Mm-hmm. And that, from a CIO's perspective, takes a lot of conversation and a lot of feel good
Scary.
To be able to do. So it takes time.
Yeah.
And I think that comes into an area of commitment of that time and making sure the best decisions being made across the organization to give those keys over. So lots of people, lots of processes, takes time, and can everybody be there to be able to make this transformation? So that's why oftentimes we're seeing this, kind of lift and shift brownfield or ECC move, because it allows them to take a certain portion of the resources, a certain portion of the risk, and move that breathe,
Yeah.
and then start figuring out, okay, based on that RISE methodology of the people and the tools, how do I prepare myself for transformation in a better way?
So let me break down, because when Kelly says the ECC move, ECC is what they're used to running for all these years. They're comfortable with the functionality of the user feature set. She says an ECC move, she means they're just going to lift up the ECC and we're going to put it onto a HANA database. From a user perspective, nothing changes. But what is changing, the database is changing, so it's slightly different to support now. You've different care and feeding for the operating system and the patching, and that is now moving into the operational model, which SAP is now supporting database administration and basis. And so that's a change, but it's still dipping your big toe in the water. We haven't changed anything for the rest of the organization. Anybody outside of IT doesn't really know what's going on.
Right.
And so that's part of this tailored move. And that's why I think this option is so great, because it gives people the ability to not have to move their data center. If you're already all in hyperscale clouds, stay there if you want to. The decision for moving data centers is completely isolated. There's no difference in software functionality, services, SLA. There is no difference to access to innovation. None of that is any different. And that's the most important part of this, is stop making data center migrations part of this decision. It has nothing to do with it. You can make it at any time you want to, but you don't have to do it at the same time.
Well, so what I'm hearing is, first, often what needs to happen, which a lot of times is what needs to happen, is, there has to be a cultural change within the
Absolutely.
organization, so that way it can all trickle down.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just a question. I mean, what happens in the case of a ransomware attack to the customer, and where does SAP, HPE, GreenLake, versus the customer? How they? I mean, it's obviously going to be a full force effect to try to respond to this, but how does this all play out? I mean, to some extent, the data could be corrupted in HANA. It could be corrupted in the customer data. Once an infection agent reaches the network and cracks through, whatever it is, firewalls, things start to spread. So
the basis is shared. So you have people know where the data is. They know how often a copy is taken, whether they're doing a snapshot, whether they're doing a DR copy, whether they're doing an offsite backup. We know where the data is. You're going to, same thing you would do internally. You would test for the extent of the migration, what's corrupted, what's not corrupted, how much RPO, how you minimize RPO, and then you start bringing things back. So it's a shared model from an administrative standpoint, so that the first exercise is to figure out what's good, what's corrupted, and the second part of it is, what's the plan we're going to put in action? Are we failing to DR? Or are we going to stay here and try to just restore what we have? And that really comes down to an extensive conversation between basis.
If it arises, though, and it's a ransomware, it's attack, SAP take action. SAP is authorized to take action immediately.
And I will say it's a shared responsibility in the CDC model. I mean,
Yep.
Referencing the Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack, which was a midstream as well. That's by and large part of the reason why we're very adamant we want to keep things in our data center. We feel like my cybersecurity counterpart sits in the office right door next to me, and we feel like a lot of the things that we've done around our data center and around monitoring that. We feel like we are, right or wrong, we feel like we have more security within our own data center than we have in the cloud, in the hyperscaler, I should say.
All right.
And folks,
Thank you.
We are a little over time, so I'll just give Jim and Kelly a minute to wrap it up.
Sure.
All you, sir.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Randall. Thank you, all the delegates and everybody that's tuned in for this. If you have more questions, my email is in the presentation. You're welcome to email me with questions. The delegates can certainly field all of your questions and are looking forward to your interaction. And we look forward to helping people tailor their SAP solutions their way, regardless of what your choice may be. So thank you very much.